The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed under the artificial stars that lit the station orbiting Nexus Prime. Representatives from 847 different species filled the tiered seats, their various forms creating a living tapestry of galactic civilization. Some floated in liquid-filled containers, others perched on specially designed platforms, and many stood on limbs that evolution had shaped in countless different ways. Counselor Thextar of the Meridian Alliance called the session to order with a harmonious chime that resonated through the chamber's translation matrix. The sound automatically converted to whatever frequency each species could understand. Today's agenda seemed routine: trade disputes, territorial boundaries, and resource allocation requests. Nothing that hadn't been discussed 1,000 times before. The council chamber fell silent as a priority transmission indicator flashed red across the main display. Emergency communications were rare, and they usually meant trouble somewhere in the outer systems. Thextar's crystalline form shifted colors from calm blue to cautious yellow as he activated the receiving array. The holographic projector sparked to life, revealing the imposing figure of War Commander Zexhai of the Zephyrian Empire. His reptilian features were marked with the ritual scars of a veteran conqueror, and his black armor bore the insignia of 43 successful planetary campaigns. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most aggressive expansionist species, but they followed the ancient protocols of the Council when it came to territorial claims. "Honored Council," Zexhai began, his voice carrying the arrogant tone that had made the Zephyrians few friends among the civilized worlds. "I bring formal notification of our intent to claim the planet designated as Sol 3 in the Outer Spiral territories. Our surveys indicate significant strategic value and abundant natural resources." A ripple of mild interest passed through the chamber. Territorial claims were common enough, especially in the frontier regions where primitive species had not yet developed space travel. The Zephyrians had a legal right to expand into unclaimed space, provided they followed the established protocols for dealing with pre-spaceflight civilizations. Counselor Vashadi of the Aquatic Collective raised a tentacle to request information access. Her species had been meticulous record keepers for over 10,000 years, and their databases contained detailed information about nearly every star system in the known galaxy. "What do our records show about this world?" The main display shifted to show the relevant data files. The planet appeared as a blue-green sphere with white cloud formations, clearly capable of supporting carbon-based life. The notation showed it was inhabited by a species called humans, who had been observed to be in their early development phase. According to our last survey, conducted 700 standard years ago, the dominant species uses primitive metal tools and weapons, Vashati reported, her voice carrying through the water in her speaking chamber. They appear to be organized into tribal groups with simple agricultural systems. No evidence of advanced technology or spaceflight capability. Several council members made sounds of acknowledgement. This was exactly the type of world the Zephyrians typically targeted, inhabited by species too primitive to pose any resistance, but developed enough to provide useful labor after conquest. The Council had long ago established that such worlds fell outside their protection protocols. War Commander Zexhai's image flickered with what might have been amusement. Indeed, our own reconnaissance confirms these findings. The species shows no signs of significant advancement since your last observation. They still fight with sharpened metal and ride four-legged beasts into battle. Our military analysts predict complete subjugation within 10 standard rotations. Counselor Thextar's crystalline form shifted to a neutral purple as he consulted the legal protocols. The Zephyrian Empire's claim appears to be within established parameters. The planet lies outside Council-protected space, and the indigenous species has not achieved the technological benchmarks required for formal recognition. A few Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The protection protocols had been established thousands of years ago, when the galaxy was a more violent place. They were designed to prevent conflicts between spacefaring civilizations, not to protect primitive worlds from conquest. Many council members privately disagreed with allowing such actions, but the law was clear. However, Thextar continued, the council formally registers its concern about military action against developing civilizations. We encourage the Zephyrian Empire to consider peaceful contact and gradual integration rather than conquest. Zexhi's laugh was a harsh sound that made several council members flinch. Your concern is noted and dismissed. The Zephyrian Empire has followed all required protocols. We will proceed as planned. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in uncomfortable silence. Many representatives began quiet discussions with their advisors, but there was little they could do. The law was ancient and inflexible. Worlds outside the protected zone were fair game for any species strong enough to take them. What none of them knew was that their information about Earth was catastrophically outdated. 700 years was an eye blink for most galactic civilizations, where technological progress moved at a glacial pace. But humanity was different. In those 7 centuries, they had gone from medieval knights to atomic weapons. They had learned to fly, to communicate across vast distances instantly, and to wage war on a scale that would have been unimaginable to their ancestors. The humans had also developed something that no other species in the galaxy possessed: a talent for rapid adaptation and an absolute refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. They had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and natural disasters that would have destroyed most civilizations. They had turned competition into an art form and conflict into a science. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, none of them suspected that they had just witnessed the beginning of a chain of events that would reshape the galactic order. The Zephyrian Empire was about to make contact with a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning to fight, adapt, and survive against impossible odds. In the depths of space, the Zephyrian invasion fleet was already assembling. 200 warships, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash, prepared for what their commanders expected to be another routine conquest. Their weapons had broken the defenses of dozens of worlds, and their tactics had never failed against primitive species. But Earth was not just another primitive world. It was home to a species that had turned warfare into both science and art, that had weaponized everything from disease to the atom itself, and that had never met a challenge it wouldn't fight to overcome. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you never see coming. 3 months after the council meeting, the Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. War Commander Zexhi stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays update as his sensors swept the target system. What he saw should have been reassuring: 1 star, several planets, and their target world orbiting in the 3rd position. But something was wrong. "Commander," his sensor operator reported, his voice tight with confusion, "I'm detecting artificial structures throughout the system. Multiple orbital installations around the 3rd planet, and what appears to be a significant debris field." Zexhi moved to the sensor station, his clawed hands gripping the control surface. The display showed dozens of metallic objects in orbit around Earth, far more than any primitive civilization should possess. "Enhance the readings. What kind of structures are we seeing?" The image shifted and clarified. Massive space stations hung in Earth's orbit, bristling with arrays and equipment that looked disturbingly advanced. Smaller objects, clearly artificial satellites, filled the space around the planet like a defensive net. And there were ships, actual spacecraft, sleek and purposeful, patrolling the orbital lanes. "This is impossible," Zexhi muttered. The intelligence report showed a primitive species. "These readings indicate spaceflight capability and orbital infrastructure." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the planet. Multiple sources using various electromagnetic frequencies. The signals are highly organized and appear to be some form of planetary communication network." Zexhi felt the first stirring of unease. Primitive species didn't have global communication networks. They barely managed to coordinate between adjacent tribes. "What about military activity?" "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "I'm detecting what appears to be a defense grid. Energy signatures suggest weapons platforms both in orbit and on the planetary surface." "And, Commander?" "They're scanning us." The bridge fell silent. Being scanned meant the enemy knew they were there and was actively gathering information about their capabilities. No primitive species should have sensors capable of detecting a Zephyrian fleet at this distance. "Analysis of their scanning methods?" Zexhi demanded. "Sophisticated, sir. Multiple frequency ranges, pattern analysis, structural mapping. These are military-grade sensors, not the simple detection equipment we expected." Zexhi straightened to his full height, letting his warrior training take over. Perhaps the humans had advanced more than expected, but they were still just one planet against his fleet of 200 warships. Signal the fleet. Battle formation. We proceed as planned. The massive Zephyrian ships spread into their classic attack pattern, a formation that had broken the defenses of 43 worlds. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through solid rock and protected by energy shields that had never been breached. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's directed at us specifically, on screen." The main display showed a human face. The species looked remarkably similar to several others the Zephyrians had encountered, but there was something different in the eyes. Where conquered species showed fear or desperation, this human's expression was calm, almost analytical. "Unknown vessels," the human said in accented but understandable galactic standard. "You have entered Earth's solar system without authorization. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." Several bridge officers exchanged glances. The primitive species was demanding identification from them. It would have been amusing if it weren't so unexpected. Zexhai activated the response channel. "I am War Commander Zexhai of the Zephyrian Empire. This system is now claimed territory of the Empire. Surrender immediately and your species will be granted worker status under Zephyrian law." The human's expression didn't change. "Commander Zexhai, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Your claim is not recognized. You have 1 hour to leave this system before we consider your presence an act of war." The transmission ended. Zexhai stared at the blank screen in disbelief. The primitive species had just threatened him. Not pleaded, not begged for mercy, but issued an ultimatum. Did that creature just threaten the Zephyrian Empire? "It appears so, sir." Open fleet communications. When the channel was active, Zexhai's voice carried to every ship in the invasion force. "Fleet commanders, we have encountered unexpected resistance. The target species appears to have developed beyond our intelligence estimates. However, they are still merely one planet against our proven fleet. Prepare for immediate assault. Show them the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire." The fleet moved forward, their massive engines lighting up space with brilliant blue fire. As they approached Earth's outer orbital zone, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the Zephyrian ships. "Contact," the tactical officer shouted. Multiple vessels emerging from the far side of the planet. Count is 87 ships and rising. The display showed sleek human vessels moving to intercept positions. They were smaller than Zephyrian warships, but they moved with a precision and speed that spoke of advanced technology and skilled crews. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, "I'm detecting energy buildups from the human vessels. They're powering weapons." Zexhai couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans weren't running. They weren't hiding behind their planet's atmosphere or sending desperate pleas for mercy. They were forming battle lines and preparing to fight. "All ships, open fire. Show these primitives the power of the Zephyrian Empire." The space around Earth erupted in light as 200 Zephyrian plasma cannons fired simultaneously. The beams of superheated matter that had reduced cities to vapor streaked toward the human fleet. But the human ships didn't break formation. Instead, they began moving in patterns that defied conventional fleet tactics. They twisted and rolled, presenting minimal target profiles while maintaining their approach vector. Most of the plasma beams missed entirely, while others struck energy barriers that flared and held. "They have shields," the tactical officer reported, "and their maneuvering capabilities are beyond anything in our databases." The human counterattack came without warning. Streaks of light, some kind of kinetic projectile, began striking Zephyrian ships throughout the fleet. The projectiles moved so fast they barely registered on sensors, and when they hit hard. "Damage report," Zexhai ordered as his flagship shook under impact. "Forward shields down 30%. Multiple hull breaches on the cruiser Vextar. They're using some kind of accelerated projectile weapon." Zexhai watched in growing alarm as the battle developed. The humans fought like no enemy he had ever encountered, instead of the desperate, uncoordinated resistance he expected from a primitive species. They displayed tactical sophistication that rivaled the best military academies in the galaxy. Worse, they seemed to be learning. Each exchange of fire was more effective than the last, as if the humans were adapting their tactics in real time, based on the results of previous attacks. "Sir," The communications officer called out. Priority message from the cruiser Keshatar. They report human vessels are attempting to ram them. Ramming attacks? Zexai couldn't hide his shock. Ramming was a desperate tactic, used only when all other options were exhausted. But the humans had been fighting for less than an hour. Confirmed, sir. 3 human vessels have been observed deliberately colliding with our ships after sustaining critical damage. They're using their own destruction as a weapon. Zexai felt something he had never experienced in 43 successful campaigns. Doubt. The humans weren't fighting like a primitive species facing extinction. They were fighting like experienced warriors who understood the cost of war and were willing to pay it. Fleet status report. 17 ships reporting significant damage. 3 cruisers have lost main power. And sir, the humans appear to be jamming our communications with the homeworld. The bridge fell silent. Jamming military communications required sophisticated technology and an understanding of Zephyrian systems that shouldn't exist. As Zexai watched the tactical display, he realized that everything they thought they knew about this species was wrong. The humans weren't primitives waiting to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous, a military force that had been preparing for this moment, and they were fighting not just to survive, but to win. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 hours after the first reports reached Nexus Prime. Counselor, Thextar's crystalline form flickered between deep purple and orange, colors that indicated both confusion and alarm. Representatives from across the galaxy had received fragments of transmissions from the Sol system, but none of them could make sense of what they were hearing. The floor recognizes Counselor Vashiti of the Aquatic Collective, Thextar announced, his harmonic voice carrying a tremor that had never been present before. Vashiti's tentacles moved in agitated patterns within her water-filled chamber. Honored Council, we have received 17 separate emergency transmissions from Zephyrian vessels in the Sol system. The content of these messages is disturbing. The main display activated, showing a collection of transmission logs. The first was from a Zephyrian communications officer, his reptilian features twisted with panic. Command, this is the cruiser Vextar. The humans are not responding as expected. They're using weapons we've never encountered. They're not afraid. Repeat, they show no fear response to superior firepower. Request immediate tactical analysis. The next transmission was from a different ship, the audio crackling with interference. Fleet Command, the human vessels are ramming our ships. They're sacrificing themselves to destroy our vessels. This is not standard combat behavior for any known species. They're treating their own lives as expendable weapons. Murmurs of shock rippled through the council chamber. Ramming attacks were unheard of except in the most desperate circumstances. Most species valued self-preservation above all else. The third transmission made several council members physically recoil. War Commander, we've boarded a damaged human vessel. The crew continued fighting even after the ship lost life support. They sealed themselves in compartments and kept firing weapons until they died from oxygen loss. What kind of species does this? Counselor Zexka of the Silicon Confederacy raised his crystalline arm. These reports must be exaggerated. No species fights to the death when surrender is an option. Vashati's tentacles darkened to a deep blue, her species equivalent of shaking her head. There are 38 more transmissions. Each one reports similar behavior. The humans appear to be treating this invasion as what they call a learning experience. She activated another transmission. This one came from a Zephyrian tactical officer, his voice barely controlled. Command, they're taking our weapons, not just capturing them. They're studying them while the battle continues. We destroyed one of their research facilities, but they had already moved the captured equipment to 12 other locations. They're reverse engineering our technology in real time. The council chamber fell silent. Reverse engineering captured technology during an active battle was beyond the capabilities of most civilizations. It required a level of scientific coordination and industrial capacity that took centuries to develop. Counselor Mordan of the Hive Collectives clicked his mandibles in agitation. How is this possible? Our records show they were using primitive metallurgy just 700 years ago. There's more, Vashati continued. This transmission was recorded 3 hours ago. The display showed a human face, but this time it wasn't the calm Admiral Chen from the first contact. This was a younger human in some kind of armored suit, speaking rapidly while explosions flashed in the background. Captain Morrison to all units. We've figured out how their shield generators work. The frequency modulation follows a predictable pattern, switching all weapon systems to rotating frequency targeting. Also, their armor has a weak point at the joint connections. Relay this to all ground forces. The transmission cut to another human voice. Command, we've successfully captured 3 Zephyrian vessels intact. Engineering teams are already aboard, downloading their navigation databases. We should have star charts for their entire empire within 6 hours. Counselor Thextar's color shifted to a deep red that indicated genuine alarm. They're treating this as reconnaissance. They're not just defending their world, they're gathering intelligence about the Zephyrian Empire. It gets worse, Vashati said, activating the final transmission. This one showed a Zephyrian war leader, his ceremonial scars pale against his darkened scales. Fleet Command, the humans have stopped trying to destroy our ships. They're capturing them. And they're not taking prisoners. They're taking our weapons, our ships, and our technology. But Command, they're letting some of us escape. They want us to report back. They want the Empire to know what happened here. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Counselor Yexvi of the Peaceful Traders spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. They're sending a message, not to their own species, but to the galaxy. What kind of message? Asked Mordan. That they're not afraid of us, Thextar replied, his crystalline form now a deep black that indicated true fear. They're letting survivors escape to spread word of what humanity is capable of. The display activated again, showing the most recent transmission. It was Admiral Chen again, but now she was standing on what was clearly the bridge of a Zephyrian warship. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, broadcasting on all Galactic Council frequencies. The Zephyrian invasion of Earth has failed. We have captured 67 vessels and neutralized the remainder of their fleet. We are now in possession of detailed star charts, military protocols, and technological specifications for the Zephyrian Empire. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We also want to make something clear to the Galactic Council. Earth is no longer the primitive world described in your databases. We are now actively seeking diplomatic contact with all spacefaring civilizations. We believe it's time for humanity to take its place in the galactic community. The transmission ended. Counselor Vashati's tentacles moved in slow, hypnotic patterns. They defeated a Zephyrian invasion fleet in a single day. Impossible, Jexka stated flatly. The Zephyrians have conquered 43 worlds. Their military doctrine is proven. The evidence suggests otherwise, Thextar replied. But there's something else. Look at the time frame. This wasn't a long siege or a desperate last stand. This was a systematic defeat of a superior force in less than 12 hours. Mordan's mandibles clicked rapidly. What are you saying? I'm saying that humanity didn't just survive this invasion. They won decisively, and they did it while simultaneously learning everything they could about Zephyrian technology and the greater galaxy beyond their world. The implications hit the council members like a physical blow. Every species had taken centuries or millennia to develop spaceflight and join the galactic community. Humanity had been forced into it in a single day, and they had used that day to defeat one of the galaxy's most aggressive military powers. There's one more thing, Vashati said quietly. The humans have started broadcasting on multiple frequencies. They're trying to establish contact with other species, but they're not asking for protection or assistance. What are they asking for? Trade agreements. Technology exchanges, and they're specifically requesting information about other aggressive species that might pose a threat to developing worlds. The council chamber erupted in shocked conversations. Humanity had gone from unknown primitive species to potential galactic power in less than a day. And instead of hiding behind their planet's defenses, they were actively seeking to expand their influence. Counselor Thextar called for order, his harmonic voice cutting through the chaos. The question before us now is simple. Do we respond to humanity's request for diplomatic contact? We have to, Vashati replied. They've just proven they can defeat a major military power. Whether we like it or not, humanity is now a factor in galactic politics. But what kind of factor? Mordan asked. Are they going to be like the Zephyrians? Aggressive expansionists seeking to conquer other worlds? Thextar's form shifted to a pale yellow. Based on their actions so far, I don't think conquest is their goal. They let Zephyrian survivors escape. They're seeking diplomatic contact rather than launching immediate counterattacks, but But what? But they've also demonstrated that they're extremely dangerous when threatened. And they learn fast. Very fast. The council members sat in contemplative silence, each trying to process the implications of what they had witnessed. In a single day, the galactic balance of power had shifted. A new player had entered the game, and no one knew what their next move would be. What they did know was that humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy, not with words or peaceful gestures, but by destroying an invasion fleet and capturing its technology. The message was clear. Earth was no longer a primitive world waiting to be conquered. It was now a military power with the capability to defend itself and the knowledge to strike back. The age of human isolation was over. The question was, what would humanity do next? 2 weeks after the failed invasion, the captured Zephyrian survivors arrived at the edge of their home system, aboard the few ships that humanity had allowed to escape. War Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, staring at the familiar star that had once seemed like a symbol of Zephyrian power. Now it felt like a reminder of his failure. The communication from Zephyr Prime came within minutes of their arrival. War Commander HFY, report immediately to Imperial Command. Supreme Leader Kexnoth requires a full briefing on the Sol System incident. Incident. They were calling the destruction of 2/3 of his fleet an incident. 3 hours later, HFY stood in the crystalline halls of the Imperial Palace, facing the Supreme Leader and the gathered military leadership of the Zephyrian Empire. Kexnoth was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, his scales bearing the scars of countless battles from the early days of their expansion. Explain, Kexnoth said simply. HFY had rehearsed this moment during the long journey home, but standing here, he struggled to find words that would make sense of what had happened. Supreme Leader, the intelligence reports were catastrophically incorrect. The human species has achieved technological parity with our military forces. Impossible, General Vextal interrupted. Our surveys were comprehensive. The surveys were 700 years old, HFY replied. This species develops at an unprecedented rate. In the time between our last observation and the invasion, they had gone from using metal tools to building orbital defense networks. Kexnoth's eyes narrowed. Even if they had advanced technology, you commanded 200 warships against one planet. How did you fail? HFY felt his warrior pride crumble as he recounted the battle. They fought unlike any species we've encountered. No fear response. No surrender instinct. They used their own ships as weapons when conventional attacks failed. They treated casualties as acceptable losses while gathering intelligence on our capabilities. You're describing a military species, Admiral Texmore observed, but our psychological profiles indicated they were fragmented into competing tribal groups. They were, but the invasion unified them instantly. Within hours, their entire planet was coordinating resistance efforts. They have some kind of global communication network that allowed real-time tactical adjustments across their entire world. Supreme Leader Kexnoth raised a clawed hand for silence. What of our technology? Surely they could not match Zephyrian engineering. HFY's scales darkened with shame. They captured 67 vessels intact. They were reverse engineering our weapons during the battle. By the end of the engagement, they were using modified versions of our own technology against us. The council chamber fell silent. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on technological superiority. The idea that a primitive species could not only match their technology but improve upon it was almost incomprehensible. There's more, HFY continued. They deliberately let some of our ships escape. They wanted us to report back, and they took detailed scans of every vessel that survived. Scans for what purpose? Unknown. But I believe they now have complete technical specifications for our entire fleet. General Vextal leaned forward. Are you suggesting they're planning a counterattack? Before HFY could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency signals flashed as communications officers rushed to their stations. Report, Kexnoth commanded. Supreme Leader, a communications officer called out. We're receiving multiple signals from the outer system detection grid. Unknown vessels approaching from the direction of the Sol system. The main display activated, showing the tactical overview of the Zephyr system. Dozens of contacts were moving inward from the outer planets, their energy signatures unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. How many ships? Admiral Texmore demanded. Count is uncertain, Supreme Leader. They're using some kind of stealth technology. We're only detecting them when they choose to reveal themselves. Zexhai felt ice form in his stomach. They're here. The humans have come to our home system. The display updated as more contacts appeared. The ships were sleek and angular, clearly built for speed and stealth rather than the heavy armor favored by Zephyrian designs. But what made them truly terrifying was their behavior. They moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. Supreme Leader, the communications officer reported, "We're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel." On screen, the familiar face of Admiral Chen appeared on the display, but she was no longer in the command center of a human vessel. She was standing on what was clearly a Zephyrian bridge, surrounded by human officers operating captured Zephyrian equipment. "Supreme Leader Kex Noth," she began, "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We are here to discuss the terms of your surrender." The council chamber erupted in outraged hissing. The idea that the Zephyrian Empire would surrender to anyone was beyond comprehension. Kexanoth's voice cut through the noise. "Human, you are in our home system, facing the full might of the Zephyrian military. What makes you think we would surrender to you?" Admiral Chen's expression remained calm. "Because we've spent the last 2 weeks learning everything there is to know about your empire. We have your star charts, your military protocols, your fleet compositions, and your industrial capacity. We know the location of every military installation and every major population center." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "We also know that your empire is currently at war with 3 other species. Your resource extraction operations are overextended, and your military is spread across 47 different systems. You cannot recall your fleets without abandoning your territorial claims." The accuracy of her information sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian leadership. This was classified military intelligence that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. "How?" Kexnoth asked quietly. "Your own ship's computers. Every vessel that escaped Earth carried complete databases back to your territory. We let them go because we wanted you to have those databases. What we didn't mention was that we had modified them first." Admiral Texmore leaned forward. "Modified them how?" "We added a few lines of code. Small programs that activated when the databases were uploaded to your central networks. They've been copying information and transmitting it to us for the past 2 weeks. The implications hit the Zephyrian leadership like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defeated their invasion fleet. They had used the survivors to infiltrate the entire Zephyrian computer network." "That's impossible," General Vextal protested. "Our computer security is impenetrable." Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since the transmission began. "Your computer security is based on technology that's over 1,000 years old. We've been dealing with electronic warfare for less than a century, but we've had to advance fast, very fast." She gestured to something off-screen, and the display showed a new image. A complete 3-dimensional map of the Zephyrian Empire, showing fleet positions, resource flows, and strategic vulnerabilities. "We know everything about your empire now, including the fact that if your fleets were to suddenly receive orders to return home, it would create power vacuums that your enemies would immediately exploit. You'd lose half your territory within 6 months." Kexnoth's ancient eyes studied the human admiral with a mixture of respect and fear. "What do you want?" "Peace and change. The Zephyrian Empire will cease all aggressive expansion immediately. You will withdraw from contested territories and enter into negotiations with the species you've displaced. In return, we will share some of our technological advances and provide assistance in developing more sustainable expansion methods. And if we refuse?" Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "Then we demonstrate why the Galactic Council is already calling this the day the galaxy changed. We have 37 ships in this system right now. Each one is armed with weapons that your own technology helped us develop. We could disable your entire fleet without destroying a single inhabited world. You're bluffing, are we?" The display changed again, showing real-time footage from throughout the Zephyr system. Human ships were moving freely through what should have been impenetrable defensive networks, their stealth technology rendering them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. "Your perimeter defenses have been quietly disabled over the past 6 hours," Admiral Chen explained. "Your orbital platforms are operating normally, but their weapons systems will not respond to firing commands. Your fleet's navigation computers have been compromised. They will only accept course headings that take them away from inhabited worlds." The demonstration was flawless and terrifying. The humans had infiltrated the entire Zephyrian home system without being detected, and they had done it using modified Zephyrian technology. Supreme Leader Kex Noth slowly lowered himself onto his command throne. In his 300 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy like this. The humans fought with the precision of machines and the creativity of artists. They turned every advantage against their enemies while constantly adapting and improving. "What guarantees do we have that you will honor this agreement?" he asked. "The same guarantee you gave the 43 worlds you conquered," Admiral Chen replied. "The guarantee that comes from superior force. The difference is that we're offering you a choice." She leaned forward slightly. 6 months later, the Galactic Council chamber had been expanded to accommodate its newest member. The human delegation occupied a section of the Great Crystal Amphitheater that had been specially constructed with Earth's atmospheric requirements in mind. Admiral Chen sat at the center of the human representatives, but she was no longer alone. The delegation included scientists, diplomats, engineers, and military advisors, a cross-section of humanity that represented their species' approach to galactic affairs. They didn't send just one type of representative. They sent experts in every field that might be relevant. Councillor Thextar called the session to order, his crystalline form now maintaining a steady neutral purple. The past 6 months had been the most turbulent in galactic history, and everyone was still adjusting to the new reality. "The Council recognizes Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," Thextar announced. Admiral Chen stood. But her bearing was no longer that of a military commander facing an invasion. She had adapted to her role as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, with the same efficiency that her species had shown in everything else. "Thank you, Councillor Thextar. I'm here to present humanity's latest proposal for the Galactic Protection Protocols." The main display activated, showing a comprehensive document that had been 6 months in the making. The title read, "Universal Standards for Interaction with Developing Civilizations." As the Council is aware, Admiral Chen continued, "The events at Earth highlighted significant flaws in our current system. Primitive species are left vulnerable to conquest while spacefaring civilizations are free to expand aggressively without oversight." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian incident had forced many council members to confront uncomfortable truths about their own policies. "Humanity proposes a new framework," she continued. "Instead of simply protecting spacefaring species, we establish monitoring and protection for all developing civilizations. Any species that shows signs of tool use, agriculture, or social organization would be placed under council protection." Councillor Vashati raised a tentacle. "The logistics of such a system would be enormous. Monitoring every primitive world in the galaxy would require resources beyond our current capabilities." Admiral Chen smiled, an expression that had become familiar to the Council over the past months. It usually meant the humans had already solved whatever problem was being discussed. "Humanity has developed a solution. We call it the Guardian Network." The display changed to show a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of small objects were scattered throughout space, each one representing a monitoring station. Automated monitoring platforms, deployed at the edge of systems containing developing civilizations. They're equipped with sensors capable of detecting spaceflight-capable vessels at extreme range. Any unauthorized approach to a protected world would trigger immediate alerts to the nearest council forces. Councillor Mordon clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The number of platforms required would be staggering, and the technological requirements— "We've already begun deployment," Admiral Chen interrupted gently. "Current coverage includes 237 systems. Full galactic coverage should be achieved within 5 years." The chamber fell silent. Humanity had been building a galaxy-wide protection network without consulting the Council. The implications were staggering. "How?" Councillor Jexka asked bluntly. Dr. James Walsh, humanity's scientific representative, stood to answer. "Automated manufacturing stations, positioned in asteroid fields throughout the galaxy. Each station is capable of building and deploying monitoring platforms using local materials. The entire network is self-sustaining and self-expanding." "You've been building industrial infrastructure throughout galactic space," Vashati observed. "Without permission. In unclaimed territory only," Admiral Chen clarified. "We've been very careful to respect existing territorial boundaries. But yes, we've been busy." Councillor Thextar's form shifted to a pale yellow. "Admiral Chen, What you're describing represents a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. You're essentially proposing to become the galaxy's protector. Not protector, she corrected. Guardian. We're proposing to create a system that prevents what happened to Earth from happening to any other developing world. We're also proposing to share this technology freely with any council member who wishes to participate. The offer was unprecedented. Humanity was volunteering to give away technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization. What's the catch? Morden asked suspiciously. Admiral Chen's expression became serious. No catch. But there are conditions. Any species that participates in the Guardian Network agrees to abide by the new protection protocols. No more conquering primitive worlds, no more aggressive expansion without council oversight, and any species that violates these protocols faces intervention. Intervention by whom? By the Guardian fleet. A new image appeared on the display, sleek vessels unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They combined human engineering with technology adapted from dozens of different species, creating ships that were faster, more powerful, and more versatile than anything currently in service. We've been building them for the past 6 months, Admiral Chen explained. Each Guardian ship is crewed by volunteers from multiple species. They represent the best of galactic cooperation. Counselor Vashati's tentacles moved in agitated patterns. You're describing a military force that answers to no one but humanity. Actually, the Guardian fleet answers to the Council, Admiral Chen corrected. We're proposing to place the entire network under Council authority. Humanity would contribute the technology and initial infrastructure, but operational control would rest with the democratically elected representatives of galactic civilization. The proposal was so unexpected that several council members simply stared in shock. Humanity was offering to give the council more power than it had ever possessed, while simultaneously making that power dependent on human technology. Why? Thextar asked simply. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Because we've seen what happens when civilizations are left to develop alone, without protection or guidance. We almost became another conquest statistic. We don't want that to happen to anyone else. She gestured to the human delegation around her. My species has spent its entire history fighting. Against nature, against each other, against impossible odds. We're good at war because we've had to be, but we're tired of it. We want to use our abilities to prevent conflicts instead of winning them. Dr. Walsh stepped forward. There's also a practical consideration. Our analysis shows that the current system of aggressive expansion is unsustainable. Within 2 centuries, the galaxy's resources will be overextended and will face civilization-wide collapse. The Guardian Network isn't just about protecting primitive species, it's about ensuring long-term galactic stability. The mathematics appeared on the main display. Complex calculations showing resource depletion, territorial conflicts, and population growth curves. The data painted a stark picture of a galaxy heading toward inevitable conflict. You're saying the galaxy needs to change or it will destroy itself, Vashidi observed. We're saying the galaxy is going to change, Admiral Chen replied. The question is whether that change comes through cooperation or catastrophe. Counselor Mordan leaned forward. And if some species refuse to participate? If they choose to continue aggressive expansion? Admiral Chen's expression hardened slightly. Then they'll discover why the Zephyrian Empire is now one of our most cooperative partners. The threat was subtle but clear. Humanity had demonstrated their ability to defeat military powers that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. Species could join the new system willingly, or they could be forced to comply. The choice is yours, Admiral Chen continued, echoing the words she had used with the Zephyrians. But the old system of conquest and aggressive expansion ends now. What replaces it depends on how willing the galaxy is to work together. She activated a final display, showing the current status of the Guardian Network. The coverage was already impressive and it was expanding rapidly. We're not asking permission to build this system, she said quietly. We're asking if you want to help us control it. The implications hit the Council like a seismic shift. Humanity had spent 6 months quietly revolutionizing galactic civilization. They had built the infrastructure for a new kind of interstellar government, one capable of protecting developing species and preventing large-scale conflicts. Now, they were offering to share power over that system with the very species they could have easily dominated. Counselor Thextar's form shifted through several colors before settling on a bright, flew that indicated acceptance and hope. "The Council will need time to debate this proposal," he said formally. "Of course," Admiral Chen replied. "But while you're debating, the Guardian Network continues to expand. Every day we delay is another day that developing civilizations remain vulnerable." She sat down, and the human delegation prepared for what they knew would be hours of discussion and argument. But they also knew that the outcome was inevitable.